Welcome back! Today on Dialed In DIY, we're making a spooky prop that's, well, to die for. I'm combining zombies and selfies into one great costume or prop, kind of an accessory that's easy to make. I'm actually dialing in a concept that was built out of the two videos that you see here that are also linked in the description below. As I walk through each of the steps, I'm going to give you a little bit more of an explanation as to the parts that you need, but for now, we're going to start with this disposable camera unit. Note that if you don't want to actually have a working flash, you can go straight to the part where we attach the camera to the arm and have a nice little prop. That little push button you just saw me remove is actually the button that you use to charge the flash on one of these disposable cameras. We got the circuit out, and now we're going to actually take this small piece of wire and bridge that charging button so that it constantly stays on. That way when power's hooked up, the flash will actually be permanently charging itself, and then whenever you use the flash, it will recharge right away. If you don't have a soldering iron, you can actually tape a little piece of wire or metal across that gap, and you can actually accomplish the same thing. We put the battery in now just to test it out because I like to do that with each step that I take in one of these processes before I finish putting everything back together. Those two little pieces of metal that were sticking out are actually the trigger bars. When they get touched together, they actually make the flash go off. I'm heating them up with the soldering iron so that I can remove them, and then I'm taking the two long wires and putting one in each of the remaining holes from where that bar came out. If you need a little bit more detail about this disposable camera circuit board, check out the video that's linked in the description below. I walk through taking it apart and what the different parts are and what they do. I'm about to test this circuit again, but I do want to point out if you don't have a soldering iron and you still wanted to do this project, you can actually wrap the trigger arms with the wires themselves and then use a little bit of electrical tape to secure them and keep them protected from each other. Just to recap what we've done so far, we replaced the charging button with a bridged wire so that it constantly charges itself. Then we replaced the connections for the trigger itself with these two wires so that when we touch the two wires together, it completes the circuit and the flash goes off. But it's very important that you remember every time you change this and charge it up, discharge that capacitor. If you don't, you could be in for quite a shock if you accidentally touch those two pins. Well, let's move on now. We're actually going to go on to step 2 and preparing the camera case itself. We made these two little holes in the back so that we can put a stiffer piece of wire through, which we'll eventually use to hold our completed camera in place. Step 3 in our process is actually making a remote switch that we can use to trigger the flash whenever we want to. For mine, I actually have this little plastic tube or container that I got from a powdered drink mix. I'm making a hole in the end of the cap, which will be sized to fit my push button switch. If you don't have a tube like this, don't worry. Find an old highlighter or a marker and you can empty it out, clean it up, and use it just the same way. Need to find one of these push button switches? You can get one at Radio Shack, electronic stores, and many hardware stores have them too. It's a momentary push button switch. You push the button, completes the connection. You let go, connection's gone. We're now putting our completed flash circuit back in the camera case. You don't have to worry if all the parts don't go back in quite right. You just need things situated so that the flash faces forward and it will look like a working camera. Like I mentioned in the video before, I actually get these free. They're junked from photo processing places, so I got lucky. This one went back together pretty good. Sometimes the stickers are really messed up and you can't use them to hold things together, so a little scotch tape works perfectly to keep the case together if it won't hold itself in place. You'll notice the hand and arm that I'm using here came from a decoration that had a sleeve built into it, so I'm running the wires right up underneath that sleeve. You may be using some different kind of a decoration, perhaps maybe like a skeleton arm or something like that. If that's the case, just run the wires right down the middle bone of that plastic skeleton arm. You'll notice I merely twisted the wires onto the switch, which is good enough for me to give this a test. So we're going to go ahead and put the battery back in the camera, which required me to loosen the attachment to the arm. Then I'm just going to twist this back down and give her a go. Hey, now that we're successfully flashing once again, let's clean this project up and get it ready for use. I'm just taping the switch to the end of the stick that works as the arm in this particular case, and then going to pull the sleeve back down to hide everything in place. This gives us the opportunity to use this and give the illusion that the arm is still the one pressing the trigger for the switch and setting off our flash. We can now put our Zombie Selfie Stick to some good use. In addition to costume and party accessories, I've actually had a lot of fun using this for gags and pranks. Just remember, if the flash starts to slow down in its recharge, just put in a fresh battery. I have an awful lot of fun making these projects and videos, and I hope you've enjoyed them too. Thank you for watching. Please press like and then subscribe. There will be more Dialed In DIY to come.